Hey, welcome back to the block. The Leon block that is. I was going to do an episode this weekend, which we're still going to be doing. But in light of what's happened this week, I figured I would touch base with Kyle and talk about some things, most notably what has happened yesterday and the aftermath that has ensued. Um, One, I want to start with actually all the resignations that have taken place since the events of yesterday. And we were literally just talking because it just came across my screen that Betsy DeVos is resigning as the education secretary, citing Trump's role in the riots as her reasoning for leaving. It's just kind of redundant.
We'll get to her.
Right.
Oh, we'll get to
But
her.
no. Who else was it? I think it was Melania Trump's assistant. It was like a bunch of random ass fucking people.
And then the special assist, special deployment to like Northern Ireland, like some really like niche positions is the best way to say it. It's like, oh,
right.
Wow, you really did something there. You really stood your ground. 13 days away.
It's what it looks like to me is a cop out. They could have saved themselves and jumped ship when Biden won the election.
Before they decide to commit,
and that was even that. But even then, they were likely to not get another job. So you really think you're going to get a job somewhere else now? Like that's what I'm thinking about, you know. But yeah. So go ahead.
Yeah, all of that actually, ironically, their resignations are actually playing into this idea of like white fear. It does. I don't want to like always like harp on this, and I know like a lot of my fellow friends are gonna like hear it and they're gonna immediately be like, Kyle, what are you talking about? Like, no. Because essentially the second you say like white fear, like a lot of people like tune off from that discussion right off the bat. Especially when you start talking about things like white privilege. Though I will say, if anything, and this isn't like meant to be of any disrespect, but just in magnitude to like how like white communities react to certain events, the way George Floyd was an awakening for a lot of white people about police brutality, the DC riots, or should I say the domestic terrorist attack on the Capitol, was actually a wake-up call for a lot of white people on white privilege, because they've seen for months how people of color, especially BIPOC, have been treated by the police, and they saw how they just walked in and just took whatever they wanted. And like I can only speak for myself, but even like my parents, right, like, you know, they're older, but like they were like screaming at the television, like, where are the cops? Like, what are they doing? Like, absolutely livid, furious. And I think like that actually has a significance in the element of like educating some of those people on what white privilege is. I mean, it shouldn't take this long, but if anything, we know it takes.
On that note, actually, I'll stop and say that actually does give me a more of an optimistic viewpoint of how the first quarter of this year is going to play out, based off of stoking, or not stoking the flame or stoking people's fears, but really shaking their world up and getting to see another side of things that people have been telling them for forever and a day, but now it's actually like sinking in. So it'll be interesting to see how those people react to, you know, more blue waves pushing forth, more people being more vocal about the discrepancies of equality in this nation. Because that's definitely clear as day now. I mean, we've been talking about it forever and a day, our parents and grandparents, but now it cannot be ignored.
Yeah. No, I mean, like, take like Connor Lamb, right? He's actually the the U.S. representative for Allegheny, so for Pittsburgh, in Pennsylvania. He was speaking on the House literally last night, right after, you know, the domestic terrorist attack, and, you know, they returned the session, and he was speaking on the floor, because, you know, the Republicans continued to object, and he kind of snapped. He snapped, and it was interesting to see where the Republicans reacted. Like that in my opinion said a lot. They didn't react when they talked about the woman who died. They didn't react when they talked about the objections being false. They didn't object to obviously, like, oh, us all coming together and returning to session. Like, obviously they weren't going to object to that. Like, everyone was in favor of that. But when Connor Lamb mentioned these people invaded the Capitol freely, and they left freely, and we know why that is. It's because of the way they look.
Yeah.
And then that was where you got a reaction. And I think that is so telling. It wasn't, oh, them being called liars. It wasn't, oh, them being called, fake. It wasn't them being called, even like mean or cruel or heartless. No. It was being called racist. It was when you brought race into discussion, the Republicans flipped out. Literally, Nancy Pelosi had to kick the person out. Actually had to eject that representative from the House. They became so literal violent and just objecting to the rules of order. So I think like that really is, it was really weird to see it, because I talk about white fear and like how that's the root of all the problems right now we have in this country. To see it play out textbook on television, really interesting. Seriously, you guys, if you're watching this and you find the clip of Connor Lamb, it's really interesting to watch and notice when the Republicans begin objecting.
So while we're on that note, break down a little more, like for everyone, what white fear is, especially in compared to white privilege or white fragility, especially pertaining to this situation that happened yesterday.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll start off just with a general idea of what it is. And I always start off by being honest to God. And like I say this to white people. White fear is the tool that politicians and people in power use to control you. End of discussion. It is a tool that they use to control you. It is not for your benefit. It is not someone saying, oh, you're weak. It's not someone saying like, oh, you're a victim. It is a tool that politicians use against you. If anything, when someone brings up white fear, don't be defensive to it. Be like, yeah, I hate that. I hate that people use that. I hate that people in power use white fear as if they can control me. They can control, populations. They can influence policy. Because I'll be honest, nothing that we're talking about right now, as sad as it is new. Like, I bet you if I go back to the Roman Empire, oh, wait, that's right. They were concerned about foreigners coming into their country. They called them barbarians. This is nothing new, sadly. And politicians for literally centuries have used this idea that if you do not follow me, if you do not stand with me, you will lose everything. That's it. And they always tie that to the way you look, because it's always usually something that's in the majority in your community. Like for a lot of white people, like most people that are white live in majority white communities. So when you look around and you ask someone, oh, what's something you all have in common? What do they say? Well, they don't say it, but they're all white. And that's something that's just culturally something that happened in the United States, because we have the way our housing is set up and the way that we've dispersed ourselves, whether it be de jure or de facto segregation, doesn't matter. At the end of the day, when you look around your community and your friends and your family and you say, what do we all have in common? For most white people, it's that everyone else is white. So when you build that tribal mentality of us versus them for power structure, they use white fear. And it's that fear that it's literally a fear that's just tied to the color of your skin. Now, whether that comes from like a fake victimization, like, oh, if you let minorities take power, you will be the subject of racism because of your white skin. Like, they will literally use white fear, the fear of being white, as a way, like, to justify some fake victimization. It's not going to happen.
Right.
And then, like, if you're thinking about how it pertains to like what we saw today, when you're talking about why those people were storming the Capitol, it literally ties hand in hand. White fear is usually what people will use to justify, like, hey, look, I know that you're poor. I know that you lost your job. I know that you're on benefits. Instead of tackling the real problems, you know how easy it is just to turn around and say, yeah, but I mean, your community's changing. That's something that's real on the ground for them. When they see, and I mean, there's a lot of implicit biases that have been trained into white culture. Like, if you see a person of any color, immediately because of our television, because of the way that we portray, like even Law and Order is a great example. Watch Law and Order and see how many of the perpetrators, or better yet, not even the perpetrators, you know how they do the interviews, like they're going around like getting a tip on a supposed suspect, and they have like it's literally 5 seconds where they're talking to someone and they're like, hey, do you know such and such? And she's just like, oh no, I don't know them, go away. Pick up how many stereotypes are in those like 10-15 second clips. Seriously, count them. Pause it, take your time and count. That is the subtle like justification almost of that white fear. Now, the thing is when white people realize that white fear is a tool, you immediately cannot be used as a tool anymore. And it's kind of like the gateway to understanding white privilege and understanding institutional racism, because they use white fear as a block. And the reason why I keep saying white fear is the root of everything, and why you have to fix this first before you can fix anything else. You go up to a white person and talk to them about, I don't even know, like talk to them about white privilege. What's going to happen? You can almost tell me right here what they're going to say back. They're probably going to turn around and be like, yeah, no. Or what are you doing? Calling me racist? Immediately defensive. Always defensive. Why do they become defensive? Well, what is the root of defense? Fear. Fear is that root. So, and another thing is like, if you're afraid, you're in survival mode. You're gonna fight or flight, which is what you saw yesterday. You saw fight out of the fight.
But hold on real quick. You take that group of white people and you take a group of black people that are under constant pressure and in a survival mode constantly, generation after generation. No wonder there's this constant friction, And
the irony is that, in fact, the difference is like in the white community, it's not essentially, it's a fabricated reality. Like it's a fabricated reality of like, oh, you are being oppressed. You are going to lose everything. You are going to be shot and killed by the police.
Right.
Like that right there. Like you as a white person, you wouldn't say, oh, I'm afraid of getting shot and killed by the police. You don't say that because you're not afraid of it. So, no. But I see white people sit there and they'll be like, oh, well, I'm oppressed. Like I'm not privileged. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like I had to work for everything I made. Yeah, that's not what we're talking about. But also I can't even have that discussion about what they're really talking about because they're immediately going to stay defensive because they're afraid.
Right.
They're afraid. And
they tune out, they shut down at that point.
They tune out. You got to fix the fear. And a lot of that comes from helping people honestly like understand, and I think we need a lot more of this, is just spaces for like white people to learn, like really. Yeah, no, that's actually completely true. It did come from the Greeks. No, I love that actually. The funny thing is, as I was saying it and I was like thinking in my head, I was like, yeah, it's actually a Greek word. I'm actually glad someone checked me on that. But when you're talking about where was I on the? Well, essentially, like if you're okay, that's essentially what I was saying. Essentially, we need more places for white people to educate themselves, because in America, especially the way white fear is designed, white people are way more concerned about being called racist than they are with racism.
Right.
Seriously, like you can take that approach. Yeah, that's the problem. They're more concerned about being called racist than they are with racism. And now this is the thing that gets like really crazy. This does not apply for all. This is like a 15% of the Trumpers. Like Of that 30%, like we're talking about 10, we're talking about a very small sliver, but that small sliver matters because, you know, that can help you win majorities, that can help you gain power, that can help you influence change in policy. You're never going to change everyone's mind. But when we're talking about some of these people, they've grown up their entire lives in white communities, in rural areas. They don't know, you know, I'm trying to think of like take like even the word John, right, from Philly. You know, people in Philly use that unironically, you know, and you see a lot of people using it, whether they're, doesn't matter what race they are. But that being said, exactly. But that being said, if you were to go to West Virginia and you were to say that word, would a white person know what that is? Now, I'm not saying another person of a different race would know what that word is, but I will say expressly a white person will not. I can almost guarantee that, unless they've had direct exposure to it. And that's where that fear comes from. They don't have direct exposure. Now, take 2021 or 2020. We're now in the 21st century, where you are getting exposure with no context, with no education, and no ability to learn. I hate to say cancel culture has become quite problematic. I'm not saying we shouldn't cancel certain people. Like some people are very, very much deserving of it. But I do feel like we sometimes cancel people that are in a learning process, and we cannot associate everybody's going to be at that same stage. You know, if you are white in America, I hate to tell you, it's going to be a learning process for your entire life.
Right.
End of discussion. And that's just because so much information has been withheld from white people because of the power structure. In a way, white people actually are victims in and of themselves. Only in the sense that, you know, they are being withheld of the information that they need to educate themselves. You can't trust the West Virginia education system. You can't trust the Mississippi education. What are they going to do? Teach you about institutional? I don't think so. Exactly. So it comes down a lot to society. And I'm not saying like you shouldn't tolerate it. I mean, there are people that get it and those that don't. But we need spaces for people to essentially come in.
Bree's saying, what about BIPOC excuses? And we'll get to that because there's another counterpart to that, Bree. Lisa said, exactly, I don't know why the fuck it is so hard for my fellow white folks to understand. And I think it's because it's layered.
I think they do understand. That's the thing. I think they do understand.
Really?
I do actually. I know it's a controversial statement. I do actually think that they do understand what is going on, but they reject it. They do. They reject it. They know what's happening, and they purposely deny it or they reject it because their fear is out. It's so much stronger. Remember, they are in a mindset of self-preservation.
You're right. I can relate to that. I think we all can relate to that in some way. That's kind of what Nathan just touched on. He said the response to a cancel attempt determines whether it sucks or not. Most people react unproductively to criticism, which is fairly
true. That's true. That's very true.
I mean, it doesn't matter who you.
The gay people that came back from Mexico. I don't know if you know, but like the gay people that came back from Mexico that were out partying without masks, and they came back recently, and the gay community has been outing them. Some of these people are doctors. Some of these people have been preaching to stay home for months, and they had the audacity because they were white, beautiful gay men that they somehow had the privilege and the audacity, in all honesty, to go to Mexico, even though a pandemic is still ongoing. Some of these people came from Southern California, where there are 0 ICU beds.
Yo.
And they have the audacity to, instead of, take the very, very legitimate critiques on their personality and check themselves. Yeah, exactly. They are now attacking those that are outing them because they're getting fired for jobs, understandably so. Yes, thank you. Exactly. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Gays over COVID. And so they have the audacity to, instead of taking the criticism and growing, they instead go on defensive and they start attacking those who don't. And that plays into that white fear. And I think like you have to, the reason why we don't see cancel culture working, even when we try it, is because these people are still afraid. You're going to cancel a problematic person. The problem is that that person isn't in the mindset where they can understand right and wrong of that action. They can't. They can only understand survival. And in this case, and I'm not trying to like dehumanize or like bring this down to a basic level. I'm just trying to say that humans are very emotional, and all the other strategies that we've tried so far just don't work. They don't. We reach these roadblocks where we end up talking past each other and not actually getting any information across. And I've spent a lot of time trying to think of like, well, what is going on? What's wrong here? If you take, here's a good one. Say, let's take like race out of it. If you're afraid you're going to fail a test, and so you have a test this upcoming week and you're really afraid you're going to fail it, what are you going to do? You're going to study for it, Now, say in the middle of someone turns around to you, just a stranger, and turns around and says, hey, you're studying wrong. The way you're studying isn't right. That's not the best way to study. If I was somebody studying for an exam and I got 48 hours to that exam, I'm going to tell that person to go screw themselves. I'm trying to like literally get my life together and trying to survive like through the skin of my teeth. And then someone is trying to improve me. I am not in a place for self-improvement because I'm in survival mode. And so that's why we end up having these conversations where we just end up talking right past each other, because they hear the information. They can't absorb it because they're in survival mode. And honestly, like people on the left,
but it goes the other way too.
Exactly.
For
we do it.
That grew up in the hood that are
you'd have to explain that.
Yeah. Oh, well, let me jump into it. I mean, it's the same thing, but black counterparts. Even if you're in even if you're a minority in a rural area, or even now in the suburbs, you're still experiencing a lot of the same stripes that you experienced when you were in the city. But now you have the added compounded scenario of dealing with racism, even more so than you may have faced in the city. More blatant, I guess you could say, but the disparities and inequalities are still there. So you're still in a perpetual survival mode for the most part, for the most of us. And so it really plays into what you're saying about talking past each other. A lot of times both groups are talking past each other. I mean, I remember going to a specific protest last summer in rural PA, like the middle of nowhere, and it was us and it was them. And they were like really hardcore Trumpers. And they gave the whole spiel about, I worked for everything I had my whole life. I'm poor. What about me? What about my life? White lives matter too. Like the whole shebang. And, it ended up becoming just a screaming match because both people are talking past each other, realizing that it's two parts to a whole. It's the same story coming from different sides of the tracks. Essentially that's what it comes down to. But I think that people don't really see it that way. They see their specific story. I think
like that also plays into the like idea that like we have to also, now this doesn't go for when we're pushing for like policy and like pushing for activism, but we do need to, when we're having discussions with people, we do need to stop valuing life stories, like valuing life experiences. I think like a lot comes into the fact that like when you're having a discussion like this and you're talking to someone about like what is white privilege, you cannot sit there and then essentially play the rating game almost like, oh, well, this person has it worse than you, or this person is doing something else, and like this person has this. You got to take it step by step. Over time, they come to understand that. And it's more of like, take like the holiday of Thanksgiving. You sit around a table and you say what you're thankful for. White people know what they're thankful for. Like, it's not like an idea of like, oh, getting them to be like, oh, acknowledge that other people in the country are suffering more than you. They can acknowledge that. And they can also acknowledge that they have things to be grateful for. But you instantly say the term white privilege, defense.
Right.
Why? Because it's tied to, the whole idea of the white fear. There's one thing I wanted to say, and I completely forgot it, lost my train of thought. I will catch it eventually. But in the meantime, bringing things back to what happened on Wednesday.
Yes, we on the same page.
You look at a lot of these things that happened, and you're sitting at home and you're wondering, like, what are we gonna do? Like, honest to God, like, what are we going to do? Because over 70 million people voted for Trump. There are so many people that are in on this, you know, that are complicit. So what are we gonna do? Well, I think a lot of it comes from, we have to come from this idea of understanding that where these people are at mentally. Now, this isn't all of them. This is a very small portion, but the savable portion. So honestly, I don't talk about the others because I don't care. They're a waste of time. I only ever talk about those that are able to be saved. If you're not, oh, well, goodbye. You get like 1 hour of my time. If not, all right, have a good life. For those people, as we said earlier, like, they're growing up in communities where, you know, whatever, they were indoctrinated into the United States nationalization policy of, like, you know, all men are created equal. America's a great country. Anyone from around the world can come here and, you know, be whoever they want. It's a land of freedom. Like, that's what you're indoctrinated into. Say you're in West Virginia, you're indoctrinated into it. You really believe that. Like, honestly, deep down, I really do feel like for most white people, deep down inside, they take pride in that ideology and they actually like to believe that it's true. That, you know, anybody from anywhere can come here, they can live free. Like, I think it's a sense of pride for a lot of people, especially white people. I don't know, that's the thing. Maybe it's the performativeness of it. I don't know. Sorry.
Probably that's a big part of it.
But you take that mentality, you know, and then all of a sudden they're on Twitter. You know, and this is the first time, like, they've ever gone on Twitter. You know, they've always grown up and always thought of themselves as a good person. They've always done community service. They've always, you know, I don't know, helped out with local charities. They've always, like, done the PTA. You know, they always make sure that, you know, they support their kids and, you know, get home for work in time for dinner. Like, they do all, like, the things that would make a human somewhat
typical
good.
stock
You know?
from mom life. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so they honestly intrinsically think that they're good people. And I think, like, honestly, outside of everything, they are. I think they are good people.
Yeah.
But, and this is the but, they go on Twitter, they go on Facebook. Worse, they turn on Fox News. And they are presented with something they have not seen before.
Right.
And now it's not necessarily something they haven't seen before, as in, like, oh, it contradicts. All right, like, contradicts, like, that idea that, like, all men are created equal, like, blah, 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 blah. It doesn't contradict that. But instead, it runs opposed to it. So, like, and when I say contradicts, I mean, like, George Floyd contradicted the notion that everyone in America was free. That contradicted. It didn't run opposed to it in the sense that, like, oh, people shouldn't be born free. That would be opposed. Right. I don't know if that makes sense, hopefully. I know I'm playing the game of semantics here, but I do think it's important because you're dealing with human emotions, and all human emotions are semantic. For those people, when you're talking about, God, I keep losing my train of thought. When you're talking about them being, I'm really trying to remember the word I was looking for. Okay, you know, I'll just move on because I'll come back to it. But
Okay.
with those people thinking that they're inherently good people, and then they go into those situations and they're introduced with something that runs opposition to it, they immediately react in a sense that is to protect, and this is the irony of it, and I'm talking for a very small few, to protect that ideology.
Yeah.
Now, you know, if you have, like, a bunch of friends and you know, your friends are getting in a fight, and then one friend tells you something and then the other friend tells you another thing, who do you want to be? You always want to be the friend to tell the other friend first. You always want to be the first one to get your story first, because you get your story out first. There's this idea that, like, oh, you're going to then compare the other person's story to yours instead of the other way around.
Right.
And so for a lot of white people, the first story they ever got, because of these systems of institutional racism, which want to preserve their power, the first story they got was that people of color wanted to unwrite all men are created equal. That BIPOC wanted to get rid of that, this being a country where anyone can come to and be free. And they use narratives like the Black Panther and stuff like that, and extreme, like, even though Black Panthers aren't even that extreme, like whatever.
Thank you.
They really though, like they run these narratives and this propaganda because there was an element of preservation involved. Like the government did it purposely to preserve power. Now we're here in modern times. They go on Twitter and they see things that don't run opposed but contrary to what they believe. And then they have a great awakening. But, and then this is the caveat, they have their great awakening. They're like, oh, okay, maybe you're right. Maybe we are moving forwards. They make one slip up and say the wrong thing, even though honestly they should know better, but whatever. They say something wrong. They get called a racist. Boom, now they're a Trump supporter. Just like that. And it's so crazy because I've seen it happen in live time. It happened to friends and family members. I've had friends and family members that I grew up with that, like, I know for a fact if they knew they were peddling what they were now and if their parents were still alive, they would beat the crap out of them. It's purely from that sense of survival. They're so, for them to admit that they were wrong would be for them to, they're afraid that if they admit that they're wrong, essentially, that the world will think of them as a racist and nothing more. They won't see all the other good things that they've done, and they will only see one mistake they made. That fear is what politicians tap into, and they use that to justify that white fear. Hopefully I made that come full circle.
Yes.
So that's why you see these people that get trapped in the cult, the Trump cult. They can't get out, and they don't have any way to redeem themselves. There's no re-entry pipeline right now in the left. I hate to say it. We're really, really crappy at that right now. You know, if you get canceled,
you got labeled a racist, now you're tainted. You can't be a Democrat. Yep. Yeah, it's kind of sad.
Because it's so much easier. And yeah, I hate to say it. I've been caught doing it too, and I'm trying to get better at it. But I do think that that's where, like, you know, everyone has a different role in this, in my opinion. Like, white people need to talk to other white people about how they're being used. But, and this is my but, because, you know, we had to talk about this actually recently, and I think that is very important. There are certain things that white people can't say to other white people because white people won't believe them. And I think that that needs to be said more often. Yes. Like, there are things that I know to be true because I've heard it from enough of my friends, and I want to advocate so strongly on, and I try, but the problem is if it comes from another white person, sometimes they don't believe it. They really don't. And so that's why I think, like, white people need to work on the white fear part, because that's something that, you know, doesn't really involve people of color. It actually just involves politicians using white people.
Now, let me give a little backstory and context for people that are, like, not really getting it. So
yeah,
Kyle and I were watching, we were part of this meeting thing or whatever, and there was well, no, it wasn't you, but I was, and there was a bunch of older white people talking about how they live in rural PA, and they had a lot of grievances with the phrases "fund the police." Not that they had grievances with it, but a lot of people that they felt like they could win over, or that were just coming around and understanding things, had issues with those phrases: Black Lives Matter, defund the police, whatnot. And so they were asking for advice as to how, like, we should change the titles and we should change how we do things. And I had to remind them, as a Black man, I had to remind them of how it makes me and my counterparts feel by being tone policed. had it been a white person saying that, they wouldn't have taken that white person serious. And it took me as a black person stating that for all the other white people who wanted to say something to say something. Had they said something prior to me, I think they would have gotten chewed out or dismissed. And so I think things like that need to be addressed as well, as you were saying.
But I will admit, most of the heavy lifting has to be done within the white community by white people. But I just want like people to know that like sometimes white people need help, and help them out. Because you know it's I've seen a lot of people, and like I'm really proud of a lot of people, but seen a lot of people that have like cut off family members, that have like really like taken like the harsh stand. But at the same time, like at the end of the day, like what good is that going to do? Like, you know, that's another thing. I'm not going to tell BIPOC to do this, because specifically a BIPOC, they go through enough. Literally, you go through generational traumas every single day. Like, just scroll through Facebook, and I can guarantee you're going to get triggered. It's the truth. White people need to get better at having trigger warnings. But when it comes to like, you know, white people, we need to do a lot better when it comes to, I want to make sure I phrase this in the right way. Like, I can't even think of the way to phrase it, but you want to make sure that you're, you know, I'll come back to it when I think of a way to phrase it that's going to be productive. It's the best way of putting it. But when you're talking about like what happened on Wednesday and how you're going to save so-called this country at this point, whether it's worth saving or not, I mean, I like to think that it is, because I hate to say it.
It is.
Revolutions usually don't favor the minorities. That's like an objective truth. And as it stands right now, under the current system, maybe in the end result, yes. But how many people will die?
Those 70 million are a minority. Those 70 million are a minority. They're not going to get their revolution. They're just going to fuck up. Well, yeah, they have privilege on their side and all. I get that. But we have
supplies.
We also have come a long way, and we've learned a lot over the course of a year. You know, the rest of us.
Oh, yeah.
The other, you know, the other however many million it is, because I'm bad at math, but like they're a minority. Okay. So, I mean, I'm just trying to keep the faith here, be a little optimistic, and say that at least we can slow or stop the Trumpist party and mind from fully taking shape after Trump gets out. Because I think that's a big thing that we really need to focus on. Trump has been the mascot of this whole party, not the Republican Party, the Trumpist party. But what we're not prepared for how to handle the Trumpist party post-Trump. Even if he gets impeached and he can't do another term, we're still going to find politicians that are Trumpist minded and that are going to really challenge progressions that we've made, you know? Like, that's my biggest worry. Your screen freeze. Something happened. We just jump on the comments real quick. Maybe Kyle's phone died, or maybe he needs to jump back in. But Jimmy said, fear of accountability stems from a cultural scale, normalization of narcissistic tendencies. White people are more. There he goes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. White people are more susceptible to entitlement syndromes and narcissistic tendencies due to generally higher socioeconomic standing and higher future expectations. Yes.
This is true. However, I will counter that. Not because it's not true for everyone, but I will counter that statement because it needs to be a very important caveat, since we're talking about, I mean, I'll just be very, very, I was going to say this before my internet decided to like commit. we're losing. I want to be very clear right now. When it comes to, yeah, sure, the Democrats might have taken the Senate, the Democrats might have taken the House, that yeah, whatever. Actually, the left were losing. I want to be very clear about that right now. We are losing. And the reason why I say that is not because of like, oh, there's infighting in the left, or oh, because, you know, like the right is just, you know, so brainwashed. I mean, because honest to God, they're growing in numbers faster than they are dying off. And the reason why I say that is because take one stroll down TikTok. I swear, in when I went to high school, yeah, okay, sure, we had a couple of races, like we did. But and I'm not saying this is because of Trump, because actually I graduated in 2016, so when Trump was running for president. So trust me, they would have came out of the woodworks then. There's been a massive increase in amounts of young white people becoming radicalized. Why? Because they're getting their story to them first, and they are only seeing the after effects when the left is trying to check them. So when you look at it from that perspective and you're looking like, well, who's the good guys, who's the bad guys? Now, I'm not saying we have to make sure we change our perceptions or anything, because, like, you know, we don't tone police. I just think that it is very important that we got to watch it when we talk about.
We have to be mindful of that shit. You're right.
When we're talking about like the prospects for privilege and socioeconomics, there are some caveats that we just need to recognize if we want to have any chance of actually like improving the situation. Because, and I always tell people this, like there are people on the left in West Virginia. There are leftists in West Virginia. You know, there are Bernie Sanders supporters in West Virginia. They do deserve at least the time and effort to try and help their communities so that they don't have to, you know, move to a city. Because that's very elitist. It's very elitist to tell a lot of these socioeconomically poor white people that, well, one, they're all Trumpers. Two, they deserve it. And three, that if, well, they have any mind, they'll leave. So elitist. That has to stop. That has to stop immediately. When we talk about this, like, yes, overall, general, statistically, if you put a white person and any other person in color in the same community, the white person is going to come out ahead every single time, almost. But, and this goes to the whole idea of like what us playing this game where we're starting to rate things. Injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere. Remember when I talked earlier about like white people having this ideology about what America's supposed to be, that all men are created equal and things such like that? Injustice anywhere is injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere. Stuff like that, those generalizations, those things that like sound really good on like, you know, Hallmark cards, but, you know, don't usually end up panning out. Those are like the idealism that a lot of white people prescribe to, which is why, and this is what I meant to say earlier, why the reaction to Black Lives Matter wasn't, no, they don't. What was the reaction? The reaction was all lives matter, because it played on white people's belief that all men are supposed to be created equal. They fundamentally believe that. The problem is they don't realize they're being used and lied to by the wrong side. See, like that, you know, that's why we end up talking past each other. And that's why also they end up fighting you back, like as much as you're fighting them, because you both think you're right. And you both think you're right because you both think that you're fighting up for justice. That's why. And somebody said this to me the other day, because they were talking about like, you know, coming out of the Trump like cult, like what does it feel like? What is that experience like? They akined it to realizing they are the bad guys. Like that's literally what they said. It's like waking up and just like watching television. You're like, oh wait, are we the bad guys? Are we the problem? But that's a realization that takes time to get to. But that is also a realization that they're being used. That's what it is. It's a realization that they're being used.
I don't think this is going to happen overnight or the next two elections even. But if we can at least start the seeds to at least grow, like not do anything right now, you know? I think it will at least get somewhere in time. There's a bunch of comments I just want to get through real quick.
Yeah,
Victoria said, sometimes sharing stories of people of color, I often in past have used method trained as to have people close eyes and describe situations, and then after speaking the experience, you give more info.
That's a good one. Yep.
Yeah. No, yeah. The power in numbers they show, we need to show for the changes that are necessary. It's typical of groups recruiting. They prey on the ignorant and non-woke. That is true. That is true. And a lot of Trump supporters really have, especially younger adults, have really been swayed by things, when I think if they were not in a bubble, so to speak, they wouldn't think or feel the way that they feel. And that's just my
It's 100% true. I say every single day, if it wasn't for the fact that I was gay, I would have came out a Trump supporter. I say that every single day. And like, I cannot express this enough. And like, it takes a lot of courage to even say this, because like sometimes I'm afraid I'm going to get canceled. But like, people need to realize that like, even for like the most progressive of white people, even like the ones that are like, that do their best.
Talk about
The
it.
reason why I understand Trump supporters is because I've experienced that emotion that leads down there. Like you will get it at times, like where you see something and you're kind of just like, I tried so much, I tried to help, I keep trying to do this and it's just not working. You know what? The hell with it. Burn it to the ground. I hate everyone. It's a natural reaction of frustration. But I will say, we should be like, it's typical recruiting that they prey on the ignorant. I don't know if I would use that language necessarily. That, but that they're ignorant, yes. But I always like to preface when we say like ignorant and non-woke, that we always understand like why are they ignorant and why are they not woke? Because like, who the hell was going to teach them? If you grew up in like, even like, hey, I hate to say John Tell, if you grew up in Lancaster and you were white, who was going to teach you? Was it going to be your parents that was going to teach you about systemic racism? Where would they have learned it from? Was it going to be your education system? Was it going to be, I mean, before social media existed, was it going to be your encyclopedia? Was it going to be your library, your textbooks? Was it going to be your newspaper?
Just think about all the media outlets that last year tried to sensationalize systemic racism in a certain way to make it palatable for white people to soak in. Like, oh my God, breaking news. The country has systemic racism, like as if it was something that they just needed to learn, when it was stuff that we've been to them for fucking decades.
But see, like they do, crazy. And like that, I think like people need to realize that like for a lot of white communities in America, they learned America had a race problem damn, I'd say some communities didn't wake up until 2020. And
I will say some communities didn't wake up until yesterday.
Well, they still didn't wake up. But no, I mean, if we're being really honest, I would say a lot of communities before 2012, a lot of white communities in America before 2012,
for sure,
did not know, literally did not know. And I have to some degree say like, it's not entirely their fault, because like I said, before 2012, the reason why I use that is because that's when like Facebook and social media started to take off from 2012 forward. So that's when people actually started to get exposure for the first time ever. They started to actually see that America wasn't, where anyone can come and live happily ever after, that it wasn't the land of the free, that it wasn't. That's why, like, if you've noticed, I don't know if it's just me, ever since 2020 or 2012, life has been getting really depressing, continuously, more and more depressing. And it's not because you're getting older. If you feel that, it's not because you're getting older. It's because you're getting more exposure. Before 2012, you literally only could learn things from a library book, a teacher, from your newspaper. It was literally curated content by those that were in power. So guess what? Now that social media exists, you learned about school shootings. You learned about mass shootings. You learned about domestic terrorism of the far right. You learned. That's why you see this like crazy radicalization out of nowhere almost, and why people are like, well, why can't we all just get along? Well, we can't all just get along because we're all on different paths, like different stages almost of educating ourselves. Now, eventually, and I know this is me being really optimistic if America even survives this long, 20, 30 years from now, I'd say most Trump supporters will actually say the statement that systemic racism is real. That's a bold statement to make. The reason why I make that is because, as I said, they are being held back in their stage of development, so to speak, in their stage of education by those in power right now. They're being brainwashed in order to prevent them from learning. Yeah. So when we talk about ignorance, we got to be very careful on accusing white people of being ignorant also, because like I said, you're going to play into that white fear. Remember, what are white people afraid of more? Being called racist than they are with racism. You start calling people ignorant right off the bat, you're going to lose them. You're going to lose them. It's a sad truth. I know we're among friends though, but you know, it's good practice.
Black frustration. It makes me frustrated.
Yeah. Started to feel even a smidge of that.
That fear in a white person makes my black ass frustrated and pissed off and annoyed. That's just the truth. But yeah, I do understand it. I understand it.
Well, that's also why white people are supposed to have those conversations, because white people are supposed to have more patience with these discussions. You're not going to send a victim to go and teach her rapist why rape is wrong.
Right.
You're not going to do that. Why would you do that? Like, it's not going to end well. So yeah, that was my point there. Sorry.
Yeah, let me jump into. There's more comments.
Okay, yeah.
What Jimmy said though, I really like what he said, because he said, talking about we're not going to be able to minimize losses and make any progressive gains unless we are better organized, better trained, better armed, and more resilient than the clowns that they let walk into Washington yesterday. And what I want to point out of that is being more resilient and being better trained and better organized. Of course, we need to be better armed, but we shouldn't be better armed until we get better organized and better trained. Educating ourselves on what our rights are and being smarter about it, because you know all the loopholes that cops throw on minorities and allies as well. I know you hate the word allies, but
let's tell the audience why the word allies is wrong. Okay, really quickly.
Please. Yeah, real quick.
Stop calling yourself an ally. Stop it. Stop. I say that actually from somebody in the gay community. Like, just stop. I'm not even just saying that for like people that are allies of Black Lives Matter. Like, them too, though. The word ally comes with this perception that encourages performance, that encourages getting a gold star as a seal of approval to justify your title. It is a title you are assigning yourself as if it's a job application. You are not applying to be an ally. It is not a title. So remove it from your bio, remove it from your resume, and stop using it. Make it, and sorry, that was really aggressive. Sorry.
No. Love passion, please.
When, instead of saying you're an ally, make it part of your personality. And that's another thing, because I see so many people that are allies, and I know there's a performative ally and another, like, I just believe that there are performative allies, and then there are people that actually care about the issues, period. There's no such thing as an ally, because any ally is performative, that calls themselves such. You know, you don't see people that are nice saying like, oh my God, I'm such a nice person. Usually people that say that are not nice people. Okay.
Right.
Like, if you are calling yourself something, you're probably not that. I see a lot of people that are allies letting microaggressions, micro racisms slip by because they're like, oh, they're my friend. You know, that's just the way they are. No, you're not an ally. You're not an ally. Just because you went to a protest a couple times, you're not an ally. Because allies don't exist. Because you're either in the fight or you're not. You either have friends and family members that are literally, their lives are at risk.
Nathan says, I prefer accomplices.
Accomplice isn't bad. I like that. Or like what is it? Oh my God, the Alphabet Mafia. I love that.
I like using the term comrade because it reminds me that like we're in this together, and it doesn't. When you say white ally, like it kind of describes it right there. It goes right back to the race. Whereas comrade, we're all on the same playing field and we're all trying to change the same thing. That's it. It's just kind of like bing, bang, boom, done.
Well, Chantal, you know, we used to have a word for this. We used to call them friends. Really crazy, comrade, right?
Friends, family.
No, I mean, I'm just mean like well, you got to watch the Comrade because you're going to play in the People's White Fear real quick. Evil socialists.
Right.
Just kidding.
Right. No, you're right.
So, but I'd say literally we have a word for it. It's called friends. They're your friends. Right. If they care about your well-being, if they actually want, if they make it part of your personality.
You don't have to put it into an organized box.
It doesn't. You don't need a damn title. Stop with the title shit.
And it goes back to what you said about wanting a star or a pat on the back because you're right. You're right, and I like your reasoning behind it too, because that actually explains it. This comment about what the South, about what Jimmy said. The South is the most diverse region in the nation with the loudest base of bigots. Georgia flipped this election. We Yanks have to acknowledge Southern leftists and BIPOC, and I think that is very true. The fact that
yeah.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. There you go.
I was gonna say the changing demographics of Georgia. It's not that it's changed completely. That population, in a sense, has always been there. Yes, times have changed as far as like Metro Atlanta, and a couple other places in Georgia, and getting progressive, going to other progressive states and coming back. Like I get that, but and of course Atlanta having more money than it's ever had, being the new LA, all of that. I get that, but yeah, no, I'll just end it there because
I just say the reason why I'd say the reason why the South has the with the South being so diverse. I mean, like take like Mississippi is actually a really good example. Like, I mean, it's actually white people do make up the minority. Like there's huge populations of BIPOC in Alabama and Mississippi. So why the hell are the Republicans always in control? I mean, voter suppression, yes. But when you're talking from a cultural aspect as to like, well, why are the white people complicit in the voter suppression? Echo chambers. All of the South is a bunch of tiny echo chambers, small towns that don't move. Like when you get to like the Northeast, you get to the West Coast, very, very, very intense infrastructure built between the cities. You know, I mean, take like Philadelphia, New York, Boston, Washington, D.C., Baltimore, Wilmington, Dover, Trenton. How many more cities can I name along this corridor? You know, there's so many people and there's so much diversity and all also kind of cramped together that, yeah, technically we are one big echo chamber, but that echo chamber is so diverse and big, we all almost come out, you know, educated, well-rounded human beings.
And being that the Black Belt is in an area that is one of the most rural areas, you got Mississippi, Alabama, even Missouri to an extent, even parts of the Appalachians, and of course, Georgia, that even parts of the Panhandle in Florida that are extremely Black populated, but extremely rural. And we're also in a world of increasingly more news deserts, where there are whole towns and whole counties that do not have any news. They don't have their own local paper. They don't have, and a lot of people don't have internet or very sucky internet connections. So being able to
probably a good thing.
Aggregate people and yeah,
for some people. I'm just kidding. So some people don't need to be on the internet. I just wanted to say really quickly. I know we talked about a lot about like what happened Wednesday. We kind of like brushed around it, but like I just want to really say like we want to go forwards from here. We have two decisions to make. We have the decision of fight. And I'm like literally saying like we're getting to a point where I do think that the United States is going to end up in armed rebellion, or we have to change our strategy on the left. We just have to change it because the way things work right now,
up absolutely have to change the strategy.
100%, because
Shit is fucking ridiculous.
it's not working. It's not working, and it worked for a bit. Well, here, ironically, I've actually like, and I guess I should give credit where it's due, actually, to Martin Luther King Jr. and Mahatma Gandhi and all of those peaceful protesters that came before, well, peaceful leaders essentially. Well, not always peaceful, but you know what I mean. Riot is the language of the unheard.
I was gonna say I like a little bit of both.
Exactly, and I hate people that always portray people as one note. So they're not. Even Malcolm X actually had a very strong peaceful streak towards the end, you know. But no, nobody ever talks about that. But what I want to say is, you want to ask yourself what you can do, really. If you want to have these discussions, you want to help combat this racism, you want to kind of like stop the bigotry, the most powerful tool, and has always been, show them. Show them. Don't tell them. Show them. Why do you think they marched to Selma? Why do you think that Mahatma Gandhi walked to the ocean and literally 2 by 2 got beat up by British officers? They knew they were going to get beat. They continued walking, and then they would replace themselves and walk again and then get hit and replace themselves. Why do you think they did that? Because they got it. They got pictures. They got video. Like, they were able, I don't know if that was actually old enough for video. They might have actually done like sketches, but whatever. The point is, people saw it. And
no, it was pictures and video. You're right, but you're right. And with social media today, think about how many stories have gotten out thanks to people filming. You know, for example, black men particularly getting executed by police on a regular basis. How many times in the past month? With the 3 men in Ohio within the past month have been executed alone.
Well, this goes back to the whole thing about like when we talk about like you have to solve the white fear first, and then you can start dealing with the other issues.
Yeah.
What just happened Wednesday actually is a beautiful example of this, and actually gave me a lot of hope out of all of the darkness that it was. George Floyd woke up a lot of people, white people, to the idea that, you know, okay, racism might actually exist in the United States today. I know
it's late, but 2020, yeah.
But well, no, wait. I'm not even talking about the Trump supporters at this point. I'm just talking about white people in general.
Yeah.
When you start then talking about the ones that are like, oh my God, Black Lives Matter, even if they got a little turned off by some of the protests, even if they got turned off by some of the things, they moved forwards. They saw all the protests and everything. They literally saw everything, because what did we do as protesters? We recorded it. We put it out there. We showed everyone in this country every single instance of police brutality, every single time it happened.
And we will
when
continue.
You were tear gassed on the highways of Philly, when you were, you know, when peaceful vigils were broken up for Elijah McClain in Colorado, like everything we showed. And guess what? When white supremacists walked into the Capitol building, every single one of those white people, because they had seen how Black people are treated, didn't need anyone to tell them that white privilege existed. You showed them white privilege existed. You didn't need to tell them. You actually showed them. That was an achievement in my mind. That's an achievement for the left, because we actually successfully taught huge swaths of America without denial white privilege existed. I mean, like CNN, like, I mean, whatever, take your news for whatever it is, but I saw CNN for the first time, like, they were bringing up the Flint, Michigan water crisis last night.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you know, I mean, they're talking about things that, like, you know, we don't think that get exposure, but for the first time, they're like, oh my God, you know, when people used to talk about Flint, Michigan and talk about like how white people have it better, I didn't believe him back then. But now that we're looking at the Capitol building, let me look back at Flint, Michigan. Oh my God, I see it.
And
oh my God, I see they still don't have water. I see the white privilege now. That's an achievement. So if you want to help, honest to God, you need to show people, lead by example. Peaceful protests, peaceful actions need to be sustained. They need to be videoed. They need to continue. If we're going to win this battle, and over time, people come to their senses, because it's hard. it's hard to deny it's hard to deny your senses. It's really easy to deny this one. People
Yes.
have selective hearing. This is not a sense you should rely on, period. I say that as a man.
Very bad.
All the women know what I'm talking about. I say that as a man. I have selective hearing. Again, the sundown town.
That's true.
Yeah, they do. They do. And you want to know why they do that? Because that's part of the preservation of the power structure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that it's worked well since Jim Crow.
The sad thing is the white people that are getting involved in it don't actually know that they're part of it. Because as I've said before, who would have told them? Who would have told them?
That's true.
So, like I said, for a lot of people, this is the first time they're hearing about these things. I know it's freaking crazy and hard to believe, but especially for, like, I understand why BIPOC cannot understand why white people haven't known this is going on.
What Jimmy brings up is, I like how he explains this. The lack of the connective infrastructure in the South goes back to the refusal of the Reconstruction Plan after the Civil War. Dixiecrats letting their own towns rot to spite former slaves and Yankee occupation. I love you, Jimmy. I fucking love you.
Exactly. And that has had a massive side effect on these echo chambers. Now, social media has actually started to destroy those echo chambers. The problem is, just as much as the left can use social media to win these social battles, so is the right. And right now we're losing to them because they're a lot better at it than we are, and we are too caught up in cancel culture.
That's true.
And that's just the truth. We're not, instead of showing people, we're yelling at people. We're wondering why we're losing.
Mm-hmm.
Republicans over here showing people lies, but showing them nonetheless.
I think we're not ready to show because we've been in all these meetings and Zooms and doing all this organizing so that we can be better prepared this year. We did learn from a lot of the fake things that we made last year. And they're just kind of like, where's Black Lives Matter? Where's all these people? We still here. You know, we just don't want to make
there's a global pandemic going on. I don't know if they've heard.
That too, but you know, they don't care about that shit.
No. Well, I mean, like, yeah, I mean, it's the craziness, insanity. Are there any more comments? I'm curious.
No.
No, okay, wow. Oh, there.
Men sitting on their third ear.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Exactly.
And then her saying that she was involved in Flint and she loves us. And I don't think a lot of people want to wake up. A Black person gets shot, they find a reason. They're woke to the shit. They're just okay with it. And no, they can't say their quiet part out loud.
There is a bunch of people, like I said, there's a lot of people out there that I would say like are beyond saving. You know, they choose this life. They literally actively choose the life that they're living. That's on them. You know, we are talking about the small sliver of people that, honest to God,
right?
I mean, you did not get to over 70 million votes, and all of them
it wasn't overnight.
Are beyond saving. You know, that's an increase of over what? 10, 11, I think it was like 14 million. There's like 14 to 18 million more votes for Trump. That's 14 to 18 million people that I would make the strong argument that are being used.
Yeah.
Deceive.
White fear, manipulation.
White fear.
But the thing is that there's a small sect of those people who, if they were shown the right things, would still be able to get it. You know, I don't think all of them are savable. But
well, it's two things. I'd say you have to show them, right? But there's another component to that. It's not just showing them, because I don't remember what I said at the very beginning. You got to cure the fear. You got to cure the fear. You can show them, and that's another thing to what James, you were saying, like why these people continue to react this way. and why like the showing them strategy, which we've relied on in the past, isn't working.
Bobby, I can't. I'm sorry. Bobby's energy, I just cannot. Said, listen, please don't get me started on White Fear. I have been having some heated discussions on it these last few days.
Bobby is the whole topic of this discussion.
Yes.
Congratulate, welcome. So where was I? No. When we were talking about
shit.
James, and the way James you were talking about oh my god. I gotta start writing this stuff down.
How about how a lot of white folks don't want to say the quiet part out loud.
Yes. Okay.
They're not really.
Yes. So with white people, I think it's very important that we have to make this distinction that for a lot of them, because they're afraid, because they're in that fear mindset, they are not going to take in any new information. So part of that comes through this idea that like, I can't believe I'm about to say this. God help me. I'm trying to think of the way to phrase this that is not going to get me in trouble with other fellow white people. Or even gay people. You know, I can say it, I'm gay.
Just bring it out.
In a sense, education, re-education, a process for re-education, but one that is safe. And I think like that, as horrible as it is, there are people out there that have questions. And unless like they have an avenue to ask those questions, honest to God, and I think a lot of this comes from building respect. And right now, a lot of white people don't have any respect for any of these protesters or anything that anyone has to say, because they don't feel like they're going to get any respect if they ask a question. Like I said, it comes down to that white fear. They are afraid of being called racist. So therefore, in order to preserve their good image, they're going to resort on the safe side. Hey, James, I'm really for it. I say fuck white people's feelings. But at the same time, this is a discussion for white people, for example. Like, I will not tell a BIPOC person to go and have this discussion about white fear to a white person. This is a white on white conversation. Like, we have to do this inside our own communities. We have to have patience. We do. Us white people, we have to have patience, because guess what? People of color, Black, indigenous people, they don't have patience for it, and they don't. We honestly, it's not their fault. It's exactly, and it's not your fault, because honest to God, if you're actually white and you are semi like woke, I'm not going to get into that term.
I'm sorry to cut you off, because what sparked this whole topic of us talking about this like 2 weeks ago was we had a conversation about Philly and the population and demographic differences between Upper Darby and West Philly. And then you could look at Mainline and Upper West Philly. You can look at North Philly and Ben Salem. There's so many different pockets of really deep, poverty-stricken, ultra-Black, rundown areas with...
Hey, Upper Darby's not that rundown.
I wasn't talking about Upper Darby. I was talking about West Philly, thank you. But I mean,
don't talk about Upper Darby like that.
Upper Darby is still very diverse, but it's still middle class, so it's a step up in a sense.
It is.
You know what I mean?
It is.
On the scale of things, if you want to judge it that way. But Lisa said, my community is full of pearl-clutching white ladies who fear the riots coming to us, and equally atrocious Black to blue racists who fly police flags. Any mention of racial justice or even having a discussion around race at all labels you anti-police, a socialist, or if you are a woman, a despicable housewife. But gotta keep trying. That's right. Keep trying, Lisa. But that's...
Lisa, I could tell you how to respond to that, to be honest. The way I respond to that... Hey, West Philly. When you're talking to those people, Lisa, the way you approach it is you don't talk to them about social justice. You don't talk to them about racism. They're not ready for that conversation yet. They're not. You need to have conversations with them about what kind of TV shows did they like to watch? What kind of movies do they like to watch? This is gonna sound really stupid. Bear with me for a second. What kind of, um, who's your favorite music artist? Who are your favorite painters? I don't know. Like, what are crap do like us white people do? Like, who's your favorite like tennis player? Like, you know, you to have conversations with them because we're in a situation in this country where everyone is everyone's enemy. Period. Like
Yeah,
everyone is out to get everyone. That's just the world we live in right now. Not
I
like I
get
mean
where you're
that's the
going.
perception of the thank you. That's the perception of the world we live in. So you need to build trust with these people. You do. You need to actually build a sense of trust. Um, and kind of like how I
Remember,
kind of like
survival mode, people. Survival mode.
survival mode. Now, I'm not saying this is going to work for everyone. I'm not saying you have to be friends with these people. And I'm not even saying you got to be nice to these people. But in order to start dismantling, to even be able to get to the point where you can have these discussions, you got to cure that fear. How do you cure that fear? You got to start by building a sense of. I'm trying to. Thank you. No problem. Um, okay. Sorry. For the most part, when you're talking about like I'm trying to think of like the way, yeah, because it's not just about building trust. A lot of it comes into like you need to understand their childhood, you need to understand their upbringing, you need to understand where they came from.
Well, you don't,
Because
but they want you to. Because how else are they going to be able to open up?
exactly, thank you. No, that's exactly what. Yeah. So it's not even necessarily you need to know their life story, but they need to feel like
Yes.
you care about their whole life. Their whole life. They need to feel that you care about their whole life. Therefore, they can open up and have a discussion where they're not going to be afraid to make a mistake and you're going to judge them for that one mistake. That cures that white fear and opens the door for you to
And I've
have the
personally
conversation.
had those conversations, and you can literally feel it based off of you have those
You feel
the
that
small
respect
talk,
being
the
built.
icebreakers. Yeah, once those icebreakers are gone, if you smoke weed, smoke some weed with them, and then ask them a few questions like, "How was your day? How was your youth growing up? What did you do with your life? You know, what brought you to where you are today? What kind of jobs have you worked? Like common things like that." And I get what you're saying. Once you build up that trust, it is easier to talk on lines of this. Not easing into race, and I'm not saying that you have to
Well,
change who you are or your rhetoric or your tone or
let me tell
anything
you,
like that.
it'll come the
Be
fuck
who
up.
you are. Right.
Like,
It
I
will.
hate to say it, in this world,
But
it will come up.
it will come up. But if you establish some sort of rapport with them, some sort of commonality in a sense of rapport with them, it's easier to have these talks and them not completely shun you away just because you disagree with them. So I could definitely agree with that. Go ahead. I thought you were going to say something.
I disagree, Bobby. I do think I think America is very ready. White America was ready to have this goddamn discussion about 70 years ago, and it should have happened 70 years ago. That I don't think that it's not that white America is not ready to have this discussion. I think that there are white Americans that don't want to have this discussion, and that's a big difference. And there is a
Yeah,
big
we've been
portion.
ready. We've been ready
Yeah.
for I don't know how many. We've been sitting and waiting. Like, y'all ready to have this talk yet?
There is a lot of
I love him.
Oh no, yes, exactly. That's exactly that's my whole point of this whole discussion is like I know a lot of white people that are like, "Oh, well, how can I be a better ally? Like how can I like what can I do?" And like I know how much that question annoys people of color and BIPOC like because it's exhausting for
Yeah.
y'all. And I literally like in a way like I was like, well, I gotta find that answer. Like, let me go find that answer for myself. And that's how we got to this discussion. And so I'm telling other white people, this is how you can do it. And it's almost kind of weird, but like adopt the races. Like find one and like, try to build a relationship with them. Like try to like build that level of
Right.
respect and like slowly back them out of the ledge. It takes time. I hate to say it. It takes time because you are educating someone who only just say they're, I don't know, 60 years old.
Right.
If they're 60 years old, they've only lived in the so-called real world for about 7 months.
Right.
7 months.
Yeah.
You have 59 years and 5 months to catch them up on.
Talk about
59 years. And then that's including the other like centuries before that. So it's going to take time. I am still learning myself. Every day I learn something new. I learn history that was denied from me. I learned truth that was told lies in school.
There's always something to be learned every day.
There's so much that I learn every single day. It takes time. People are at different stages. If you really want to help this process, help get someone started on their journey. You don't have to see them through to the end. Get them started. Give them the tools it takes to succeed. Those tools are analytical thinking, feeling of safety and security. Like, I know it's so annoying. This is why I specifically talk to white people. I'm not going to ask a person of color to tell white people to feel secure. That no. But it's up to us white people to make other white people feel secure. It is. It is. That's our job. Like that, we have that responsibility.
Yeah. I agree.
Oh no, we're not. I didn't say you're gonna be friends. Friends is a high bar. High bar.
Right.
But to be fair, after the process is done and it's successful, I mean, won't you guys be friends? If you think about it, if you're successful in the process, I mean, seriously, like, I know I'm trying to like retrain people's brains, but if you're successful in this process, won't they come out the other end not racist and then anti-racist? Won't they have the same views?
Being anti-racist and coming out on the other end and being able to give them encouragement to go do the same thing to other races that they know still. So I think what you're saying, I do agree with you. And I didn't think that I would on
bad news.
Right.
I'm gonna be the bearer of real bad news. This is hard. It's gonna be hard, and you weren't gonna solve it with a Facebook post.
Facts.
Period. Like, this was gonna be a hard thing. It may even come to the point where, like, okay, you're gonna have to like treat some racists nicely. I'm not saying like, okay, I know we're in this. Trust me, it literally is taking me every ounce of my being right now to even want to have this conversation and not want to take like a bunch of like Mike Hard's lemonades and like run around my township and smack some people. Like, I'm telling you right now, dying to do it. I really am. It's taking every ounce of my being, but I know that I would be part of the problem. And that's the end of the discussion. It's hard. And I'm not even expecting the people that are on this call right now that are listening in that are white to even just come away with this conversation and be like, oh, I completely agree. Like, it's hard. It's hard to hear that. But we do, as white people, have to endure more. We have to endure more. We have not even endured close to enough that is going to help fix this situation. We have barely even started to endure enough to even come close to the solution. Okay.
Correct.
I am uncomfortable. And I damn well know this situation wasn't going to be solved by white people becoming uncomfortable. It's going to be painful. If you want actual change. And like, I mean, there's a couple people like
what Bobby is saying, I 1,000% agree with. Which is different than what you were saying. I feel like these are two different things here, because white America, white America, not white people in America, white America,
there's a difference,
isn't ready to have this conversation. Still look at how the media has portrayed this. You know, are there white people waking up? Are there white people that were shocked into what the fuck is going on in our country? For sure. But I think that we still have to really dig our hands and our hooves in the dirt and go back to square one when it comes to making tangible change, as far as changing one person at a time, one mind at a time, and opening their mind up. And Bobby, I know, as hard as it can be and frustrating as it can be, invest your time wisely, because you cannot pour from an empty cup. And you, as a person of color, do not need to always engage. I don't know if
Exactly.
you're
It's not your
biracial, if you're black.
responsibility.
I don't know your actual ethnic origin, but I will say, if you happen to be around a lot of white people and you find yourself having these conversations a lot, I think it's important to kindly decline and exit out of that conversation if you can, or insert white person here, you know, insert woke white person right here and bring them into the
Insert
conversation
ally
and
here.
yourself out. Yeah, insert ally here.
Ally here.
You know, but save your energy. You know what I mean? Like, that's important for people of color. That's what I'm preaching all 2021. Save your energy and pick your battles, because some of these battles are not for us specifically. We've done our work. On this note, I think our work to do as people of color this year is to get into office and to get to positions of power and all move forward in one frontal line. I think white people, or white comrades, as we will call them, white friends,
Yeah,
I
friends.
think they're I think y'all job.
We had a word for
year,
this thing, like, you know, where people actually cared about each other. Upon a time, we used to call them friends. We didn't need special titles.
Right. But I think that's the job of y'all this year, is to really support us as Black folk and people of color going into holding more powerful positions and really challenging the status quo, gaining some equity when it comes to housing and ownership of things. And I think for y'all, it really comes down to making progress as far as having conversations with racists one by one. And getting rid of that white fear, chipping away at it one by one. You know, it's not going to have no right. Go ahead.
You can do this in mass. Like, you can, like, I should say that, like, one, when I'm talking about like white people, like, one, you need a support group. You need to find other like-minded white people that are going to help support you, because I'm telling you, it's going to be rough. It's going to be rough. You're going to need to vent. You're going to need to de-stress. You're going to need to take mental health days, because you're going to hit roadblocks.
Right.
It's hard. But that's why it's important to have a support group. Don't do it on your own. You know, I mean, there are plenty of so-called white allies out there, so y'all can get together. I know you can. And I know we all can to do this. But I mean, I take France, actually, because they did this. This is actually a really interesting example. France actually did these so-called almost mini TRCs in a way. But they actually had like white community groups. Now, other people were like allowed to come, but they did discourage like people of color and minorities from coming, because they wanted white people to feel comfortable so they could ask the questions that they needed to ask and help do the education process. And they were run by so-called woke white people. And now I don't know how you qualify who is a woke white person. That is a quagmire in and of itself, and I'm not going to get into that. But as a structural program, as an idea to do these mass conversations with people, build that respect, build that community, almost helps. If anything, you're not going to like build Rome in a day, but at least you can maybe take away some of the tools, I would say, that people use them for, you know, like part of that dismantling of the white fear. You want to dismantle white supremacy, you got to start with white fear. That's the truth. White supremacy will always exist as long as there is white fear. That's why white supremacy has existed for centuries.
White supremacy is that all-encompassing, it's stuck and embedded in, but there's all these different satellite issues out and around the outer edge that prevent us from getting to white supremacy. And white fear is one of those things at the surface, you know, and if we're not scratching at that, we're not doing anything about supremacy whatsoever.
You're not going to get any deeper if you don't get through that.
Right. It's literally just scratching the surface. I want to looking at it a different way. I know. Jimmy said, this is what I like, because I agree with this too. It's spot on. We have to acknowledge that even if racists end up anti-racist, BIPOC might not trust them, and that's okay. Forgiveness is a process that must be dealt with delicately.
Yeah. It should also be mentioned, I just want to say real quick. Take race out of this situation, like literally take race all the way out, and we're just human beings. Not everyone's going to like you. Like, that's like a human, like not everyone is literally going to like you.
Yep.
Stop. Like I see so many white allies that like need the validation of every single black person, and if they don't get it, they like either become a racist, ironically, or because they're like, oh, screw this didn't work. They don't like me, and not everyone of them liked me, so I'm gonna become a Trump supporter. Or they
And then goes prove your point. Performative.
Ally. This is why we don't use this term anymore. Sorry, but yeah, that I don't know. Like, I'm like on like a absolute crusade against the term ally. Sorry, that was like my whole thing though. I don't even know what my second point was, so I hope I made my point. I completely forgot.
I love y'all. Open question. Are there ways to effectively cultivate curiosity among racists? It would be a way more efficient to get them to do some homework without a tutor. That is a very big question.
Yes, that is an amazing question. And I would say, I mean, Jonte, you probably have your own answers for this, but my answers would be for that. Honestly, you know, take like school as an example. Like current events are great. But, and this is the caveat, you got to get to the current event first. This is very important. They can't be seeing the current event on a news station like Fox News or something. Like I know, tragically, but this is the example that comes to mind. When you were talking about some like police shootings, I usually find out about it before the news does. And I think that goes for a lot of people. That is a perfect, not a perfect, well, actually, no, it is a perfect time to have those conversations. And you should be having those conversations. I think the problem, though, with having people do their own research is they don't necessarily know what they're always looking at. And that comes from the fact that, like, remember, these people have not been given any tools whatsoever. They've only been given tools. I mean, at this point, they've been given tools to disbelieve. You're not even dealing with a blank slate anymore. And that should be pointed out. You're not dealing with blank slate white people. You're dealing with white people that have been turned against you. So, like, that's another thing that needs to be taken into context. So start with the tools, work your way backwards. So honestly, if I was talking to like I'm not talking like trying to convert a QAnon supporter, but you know, I don't know, your casual racist Karen, you know, who like calls the police on black people. That's someone that could be educated.
Right. For sure.
If we're determining who can be like helped. I don't know. I'm trying my best not to classify people. I like to think that everyone has a chance, but that's just not the truth.
Okay, so let's grab the white redneck who does construction and has a couple black homies that work with him. Perfect. And because they agree with his viewpoints, he thinks that he's just...
No, it's a great example. It's a great example because what they don't understand is that, like, for example, like you can show... that's where you like have to have those discussions with people where you have to like be like, hey, what do you care about, like what, like have those like, you know, what's your favorite music, like stuff like that, because it helps you understand who they are as a human being, helps them to like
that brings up what you're saying actually falls in line with James' rebuttal to Nathan's comment. He's saying I think it's more about comfort than curiosity. So it's going in line with what you're saying. I agree with both, but I think it is more about comfort over the curiosity, because a lot of the people that are comfortable being racist because it's their status quo.
Humans are curious creatures. Like inherently we're curious. Like seriously, if you make someone comfortable, especially if other people around them are talking about it. Like I know this because the reason why I read The Hunger Games in high school was because all my friends were talking about it and I didn't want to be left out of the discussion. So I got real curious about The Hunger Games and I decided to read it. So it's the exact same thing. But if reading The Hunger Games was some kind of entry point into some kind of far left conspiracy that my parents had told me it always was, I'd probably be a lot less likely to read The Hunger Games. I mean, it totally is, though, by the way, but like, what? No, I'm just kidding. I'm just saying the whole reason why you have all these performative white allies is because they all think they're Katniss Everdeen, but whatever.
Got a point there, though.
I'm sorry. I just poured the tea. If it burns someone, oh well. No,
this is what Vicky just said. Stop sugarcoating the truth to save feelings.
I don't got time for it. And also, sugar's expensive. I don't got enough money for that either. So.
No, but it goes to playing up on the curiosity, stoking that curiosity by simply
making them comfortable.
Yeah, but I hate to say it, by like buttering them up, if you will, because
Well, I don't want to say like you need to butter them. The only reason why I push back on that is because honestly, like I don't want us to reward racists for being racist. So I want to be careful about using terms like buttering up. Like, you're not going to get anything out of this. You're just not going to get hate from society. Like, that's your benefit. Your benefit is that you're not going to be the target and problem in our country. That is the benefit. As a good benefit. Like, I mean, do you want to be a problem? No. That's the benefit. But I don't want people to think like, oh, you're going to get something out of this. What you're going to get out of this is you're going to be able to live a normal human life and not be deemed a racist on your like tombstone.
Right.
Okay. You're gonna get a marked grave instead of an unmarked grave during the Civil War, Part 2. Pick your side. I'm just kidding. Right, I need to stop. I'm gonna get myself in trouble. Be like Antifa terrorists talking about overthrowing the U.S. government. Look. Yes, but in the educate by words by not, and that's what I was talking about earlier when I said like George Floyd compared to like George Floyd educated a lot of white people for the first time. That was the first time they were like, because like take like Rodney King. We would think that Rodney King would have woken up a lot of white people, but a lot of white people ended up looking at Rodney King as an incident, as a outlier, and not a like systemic issue. And the reason why is because with Rodney King, they videotaped Rodney King. But when George Floyd died, it was then George Floyd and then Breonna Taylor. And then it just kept going on and on and on and on. And I do know their names.
More than any other year. Previous to that, I mean, Tamir
But
Rice,
it's that every year.
I mean,
but
Eric Garner. It was always, yeah, but those cases.
But you showed it. You showed it for once. That's the difference.
It was the video footage wasn't as detailed as this, like we saw from beginning to end, you know.
And I know like
go ahead.
I was gonna say, and like I know like BIPOC get really tired by seeing all of it, but I can say for the first time ever, 5 years ago, if you had asked me, let me be a little bit. If you had asked me like 7 years ago, if police brutality was an issue, I know I was a lot younger then, but I'd say no. I would say no. And that's the truth. And that's after what happened in Ferguson. Because it looked like an isolated incident. Did I support what happened in Ferguson? No, I did not. But it seemed like an isolated incident. And so I was against the police in Ferguson, but I didn't look at the police as a whole as like one big problem, as I do now. I can say also, after Ferguson, when I saw what happened to George Floyd, my reaction wasn't like, oh my God, another one. I'm exhausted. But I can tell you, by the time that we got to Andre in Columbus, Ohio, first time ever, I, as a white person, felt some sense of tired. Like, oh my God, here we go again. Another one. That is the difference and the reason why that action worked over like, you know, the words of others, you know, because when you're talking about instances and why like, oh, well, white people should have known, they're not going to. We have to understand the institutions, because we all agree racism is systemic and it's a power structure.
But we all live in bubbles and isolated places.
Exactly. So and it's also before social media. Rodney King is way before social media. Like, where would they have learned? Where would they have learned? Not excusing it, but if we want to understand and honestly save these people from themselves, we have to understand the reality of it.
I'm gonna send you something because it's from today. There's this white guy standing in front of his house in DC and he's talking to this black girl that's in her car in the street. You saw that?
I did see
And
that
he's
video
like,
actually.
yo,
Did you see how mad they are? That's what I'm
I'm
saying though.
glad
Like,
that a white person is just as upset and frustrated and livid as we are.
and that's what I'm saying. That did not exist a year ago.
He actually said they let some crackers take over the Capitol. Like that shows the level of anger.
But why are we winning on that issue? Because we showed it. That's why. Because when Black
Right.
Lives Matter happened, we didn't give up. We kept going. 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 I know it technically fizzled out a little bit. Let's hope to God it starts back up. Damn well better bet I'll be out there. But you know, when Ferguson happened, I'm gonna have to. My apologies, but if my like just from my right on top of my head, from Ferguson to George Floyd, I'm struggling to think
Right. Yeah.
of another name. And I damn well know now
Eric
that there
Garner?
are hundreds. Oh yeah, that's true, Eric Garner. But
there's too many to fucking look. I can't even ramble off the names from last year anymore because it's been so many. With the 3 at the end of the year, Corey, Casey Goodson, and Andre Hill. Like, and there was another one from Ohio too. Like, I can't. Like, and I hate to say that, but that also shows to how common.
But white people are feeling that for the first time ever. And if anything, with white people and their privilege, it is not a feeling that they are used to, and it is not a feeling they are comfortable with. So the good thing is that I have seen a lot of white people that are so fed up with like this that essentially when what happened on Wednesday with the Capitol, they immediately were like, these goddamn privileged ass white people think that they can walk into the they were talking like that, and I'm sitting here like
right.
Like, I damn well know, like 2 years ago we were getting in screaming matches because you thought that a cop should just listen to the cop.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And now you're bordering on just ACAB. Like it's literally like the bordering on ACAB almost. And like that whole reversal, like I also take this because like I take a lot of it from like the gay, I guess I could say the gay marriage movement, but it really wasn't just the gay marriage movement. But I mean, it kind of is because let's be real, LGBTQ rights in America have really stagnated ever since gay people got married or got marriage rights. And it's an absolute atrocity. Fuck white gays. I say that as a white gay. So, seriously, the most problematic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I know. Hey, I think everyone was sitting there and was just like,
yep.
Where's the National Guard? Where's the tear gas?
Where's the tear gas? Where's the bomb? Like,
my mom was like, use pepper spray. And I was like, nah, use them chemical weapons banned by the UN. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yep. I think we were all there. But
we got it. We got it here in Lancaster. Why are they exempt from it? You know?
Privilege. But that being said, I think it's actually better they didn't.
Yeah, because it showed the inequality.
It showed so what we were talking about. Like, yeah. I don't think you guys I mean, maybe you guys do, but I mean, maybe just give it a couple more days to sink in. But like,
all the news look back on this are pointing it out now.
Literally, CNN. I swear to God, and I love it, but like, they have not from literally the day it was happening, like from 3:00 in the afternoon when Jake Tapper first mentioned it, like. This isn't how they treated the Black Lives Matter protests in August. Mm-hmm. Ever since then, they've literally every single other conversation, like every hour, they're talking about it. It's up there with the pandemic. Like, why were Black Lives Matter protesters treated like this? Also, there's like 1,000 more people that died of the pandemic, and Trump might get impeached. Like every hour on the hour, those three things. They keep hitting back at it, and I mean, I've slowly watched CNN radicalize. I don't know if anyone else has, but like,
and all of the average Americans, i.e., white people that are watching, are soaking that information in. And finally, maybe they'll understand. Like, just go over that edge, and they were getting there. Maybe will point them in the right direction of finally putting the whole piece to all the pieces of the puzzle together. You know,
and
we
I
got
was
like
gonna say,
we got like minutes here, so I just wanted to
no, go for it.
go a little deeper into yesterday. So like we're already on the topic now, anyways. Like your actual thoughts about it, and catch me up because you know I've been a little out the loop. So
I guess I'll start the sentimental approach. You know, in the United States, obviously, like we don't really have a national religion. I mean, yes, it predominantly usually is Christian. That's like the predominant one, but for the most part, like the nation doesn't have a defined religion. So like I think for a lot of people, I don't know, I guess I'm speaking for like white people, but or some white people, but democracy is almost like the culture. Like that is our religion. And in all like the closest things in the United States that we come as Americans, and I'm not saying as in general because there are actual holy sites that are all Native American and indigenous, but in terms of modern white America holy sites, Congress, the Capitol building is almost a holy site for the Republic. You know, it's sacred ground almost, like the Supreme Court and the White House. You know, but especially the Capitol, like the White House, okay, but and the Supreme Court, okay, but the Capitol is like it's a holy place almost. So to watch what happened and unfolded, the absolute, not that I'm surprised that it happened, I don't think any of us were, but it didn't make it any less shocking to see people treated with such disregard, you know. And this is also coming from the right, who so-called said that they had the high ground and that they had respect, which I think made it even more painful, because the so-called people that, you know, there are very few things left in politics that are off limits, very few. But because of their posturing and the way that they said things, one could believe that, you know, the Capitol building would be one of those things that would still be held in high regard, you know, even among Trump supporters. But that was not the case.
You forget that this still is a semi-cult. So as soon as their leader says do something, they're going to fall in line and just do it.
Oh, 100%. That's what I'm saying. I'm not surprised they did it. Doesn't make it any less painful. And so I think I watched it when I was watching it live. Like I watched the whole thing live. I stayed up like all night. I didn't even like sleep really last night. I think I only got like an hour or two of sleep. And it's just because I like studied history and I've seen the process of radicalization. I've said for like months now, I hate to be that person that like, I told you so. I've said for literally months now, because I like when we were getting death threats saying like, we're going to run you over in the streets to the Black Lives Matter protests. I was like, these people are going to turn into terrorists. I literally said like multiple times, these people are going to turn into domestic terrorists. And no one wanted to listen. Literally no one wanted to listen. And here we are. Here we are, a domestic terrorist attack on the Capitol. Because you can tell, if you are willing to run over someone in your community, you are capable of anything. If you're capable of murder, you are capable of anything. If you're even capable of the threat of murder, you are capable of anything. And therefore, yeah, I guess that's a little bit of that white fear there. Sorry, let me check myself. A little inside picture to that. Drinking the Flavor Aid. Yeah.
I like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, our cult. Yep, it is. Because you always hear people that are like, this is a country of rule of law. It's rule of law, rule of law. Like, we treat our Constitution as religion. You know, we do. And so to see it desecrated like that, and I think like that's another thing that made it so shocking. Like, yes, okay, I knew that they were going to try to overthrow the government. We all did. Ironically, I don't know why. And I should have seen it coming, but oh well. I did think that the police would put up more of a fight to save the building. I did think that there'd be more resistance and they wouldn't be opening the gate. I didn't think
the National Guard, yes.
The National Guard, but that's the
no.
Oh no!
I was not expecting the Capitol Police to do shit.
Well, okay, so there's three. Okay, I should mention to everyone.
Because you have DC Police, Capitol Police, and National Guard were all
There are
there.
three.
National Guard were
Yeah.
patrolling DC. So like they weren't
Yes.
actually there at the Capitol. I think had the
Yes,
National
but when
Guard been
Black
there
Lives
on
Matter
scene when it
happened,
happened, right?
they were
It would've been
there,
different
and that's why
Right.
I was under the impression, and I've always had respect for the National Guard, always. So, and for the most part, I mean, to be honest, those in the National Guard are just victims of the military-industrial complex, anyways. So, like, I have
about it.
all the support for our military and military veterans because they're all victims. Okay. End of discussion. Okay. But for the most part, when we're talking about like the National Guard, like they wouldn't have tolerated it. They wouldn't have tolerated. They would never have gotten that far. I mean, therefore, though it was planned, and I mean, the Capitol Police. There's like two things. I'm not trying to defend the Capitol Police because I've seen some shit that like I'm like mad sketching that needs to be investigation about. But I will say that the Capitol Police, since they're their own police like department almost, they are really used to dealing with protesters, like, you know, coming in and like sitting on the floor or standing, and they remove them actually peacefully almost always, because they're usually people that sit down on the ground and you have to like pick them up and carry them outside the building. They're actually very used to that. They're used to peaceful resolving almost of those protests, because, you know, nobody really ever tries a terrorist attack on the building, so they're not really trained for that. The DC police, on the other hand, if you noticed, if you watched the night shift come in, they were beating the crap out of the protesters. Like when DC police came in, and it makes sense because it's DC. And what have we always said about municipal police departments? They got to taste their own medicine there. But when it came to Capitol Police, I don't know. I put a lot of the responsibility on, honestly, the government, and also though just Donald Trump. Like Donald Trump was the person who had to call the National Guard to stop the coup he put in place. No wonder no one came. It took Mike Pence to do it. Mike Pence actually had to call the National Guard. And therefore that is why it took so long, and then things spiraled out of control. There were 40,000 Trump supporters. And I think on duty, Capitol Police had over like less than 100.
Right.
That's not that I have to, at a certain point, give them their due diligence. You know?
Because I did see footage of like a black cop being chased by a mob of people running up the stairs, and all he had was a baton with him.
They're not equipped.
All he used was a baton when he could have used the gun, but then he would have been on trial for murder because he's a black cop. But
also, though, I mean, it should be mentioned, like, he is a black man, and he knows the real threat of a white supremacist, and that if he started shooting, he would have gotten shot back. He would have been killed.
That's what I'm saying. So like all he felt like he could use was his baton and running away. But that's so sad.
Capitol Police are not municipal police.
Maybe because it was a black cop, I felt somewhat sorry for him. But had it been a white cop, I'm not gonna lie, I probably would have been like, I'm not gonna lie.
No, exactly. Capitol Guard. Thank you, Victoria. Exactly. Capitol Guards, like the Capitol Police. I mean, I know when we're talking, because, you know, I'm coming from a Black Lives Matter perspective. Like, we talk about police reform all the time. Capitol Police are not DC police. DC police are goddamn garbage. They are the problem. They are everything that we talk about that is wrong in policing. Capitol Police, I'm not saying they don't have problems, but they're not Capitol Police do not go around and shoot people in their homes, like with no-knock warrants. Okay?
No.
They literally, their job is to just...
That's not their jurisdiction. They can't.
They just eject protesters. That's literally almost all they ever do, is they eject protesters. They are not trained to stop domestic terrorism.
That's true.
I have to give them some leeway. So that being said, I've seen some shady things happen, but at the same time, like, I don't know. There needs to be an investigation, because I don't know if the reason why the Capitol Police opened up that gate was because they fell back to a stronger perimeter because they didn't have enough people. Like they fell back to the doors because they only had 100 people. That could be a reason. I don't know. Like, there needs to be an
Either
investigation.
way, there needs to be a really big internal investigation. And from what they're saying, they are going to be making a lot more arrests. Because obviously there's cameras for everything. All these idiots posted people had GoPros and camera phones and filming the whole thing. So
I've already made at least 3 FBI reports. Speaking of which, if you have any information or tips regarding the unrest and domestic terrorist attacks in the Capitol on Wednesday, please go to tips.fbi.gov/US Capitol. That's spelled CAPITOL to everyone out there, because Capitol was really slaughtering a lot of y'all yesterday. Like,
right.
Y'all really don't know the difference. It's okay. I know it's really classist and elitist, but like,
right.
It's Capitol, not Capital. Okay, it's Capitol, POL.
No, thank you so much for pointing that out, because that was irking me.
Sorry, it's a small thing. But yes, please make any reports. Terrorists have no place. Terrorists have no place in any civilized democracy.
Agreed.
And the only ever real terrorists are usually white supremacists anyways, but I'm not going to say that. I'm going to shut my mouth before the FBI sticks on me. They're going to come after me.
All right. Yeah, no, I'm about to wrap this up, because I'm going to call you in a little bit. We'll chit-chat some more.
Cool.
But we wrapping up. It's like we're about to hit the 2-hour mark. So yeah, no, after the event that I did, that was a part of right before I called with you, it just got me thinking about things, and I really wanted to dissect this with everyone. I was completely busy doing a lot of fucking things yesterday and today. I still have barely gotten any sleep, but I felt compelled to speak about this, and with what better person than you, Kyle, because I fucking love you. And when we talk, like, we could just go forever about these topics. And I wanted people to see the things we talk about, the point of views we have, and to highlight it, especially this specific topic, because I know we wanted to talk about this for a while. And I do want to double down at some point and like really dive deep into white fear and black frustration a little more at some point, because this one was just, very random. But it's okay. I just wanted to chat and shoot the shit with everybody else too. So I really appreciate you joining in.
Hopefully somebody learned something. I do hope someone learned something, because we are
teachers. We are teachers, and we're sassy and classy. So I think people learned a lot tonight.
I also should preface this with I have no idea what I'm talking about. This is one point of view. I just want to say this is just my point of view on things, and so I just want anyone to know that it works. So you can do that. You can pick it based off of the fact it works, but I don't know. Don't trust me.
People learned a lot tonight. Oh, sorry. I ended up clicking the thing. I'm ridiculous. But yeah, no, I really appreciate you joining in on this with me, and appreciate everybody for tuning in tonight. I know there was a lot of things going on this evening. I have a busy weekend ahead of me, but I'm definitely going to take the time tonight to relax and get a couple more things around the house done. So I hope you all have a great night.
Stay safe, stay vigilant, and check in on your friends.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Yes, people. Be good to each other. Night, y'all.
Bye.